Today we have Jonathan Cairns. Jonathan is a running coach and author of The Plant-Based Runner, which is an excellent book for anybody who is interested in getting into running or hoping to maybe do their first marathon. I've been reading this book lately and it's full of inspirational quotes and full of really good practical advice that I think would be useful for anybody who is maybe struggling with their weight or perhaps getting off the couch. It's a great story. Jonathan's came from a place where he was really unhealthy and has managed to basically come full circle out of this and basically has ran 15 marathons and 6 ultra marathons now. And if it hadn't been for COVID, I'm pretty sure he would have probably done a lot more. So it's great to have you here, Jonathan. Thanks for coming on and welcome.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here. It's lovely to talk to you. By the way, you sound a bit like Kevin Bridges. It's the only other Scottish accent that I know.
Well, that's not bad. You know, between Kevin Bridges and Billy Connolly, that would be my two favourite accents to go for. So we're doing all right.
Okay, doing good. Anyway,
Yeah,
it's good to be.
So I've been reading your book actually, and it's really good, man. It's really inspirational. The story's great. Why don't you just start, I suppose, with a little introduction to everybody who's listening, your story as to how, basically what you saw up in this book, how you went from where you were to where you are now.
Okay, Chris. Well, 11 years ago, I was a different person to who I am now. I was overweight. I didn't know I was overweight, but I was unhealthy. I had a miserable marriage. We had a relationship where we didn't communicate. We got to the stage where we had 3 young kids and we just couldn't communicate. We were like black and white. So it was pretty miserable. And I worked in the US at the time, so I used to travel. I was on a plane every 2 weeks to Florida. So I was living on airport food, on hotel food, crap, basically. So my idea of a good quick meal was really a bottle of red wine and a burger or whatever was going at that time in an airport. Really bad. And one day at one of the kids' birthdays, I saw a photograph of myself and I thought it was somebody else. And then I looked at all the photographs. 11 years ago, there were photographs, like physical ones. And I was looking at them and I couldn't believe it was me. So I decided then I've got to do something about it. This isn't the person I wanted to be for my kids. Like I wanted to be somebody else. I thought I was somebody else. So I wanted to be healthy and I wanted to look better and I just wanted them to give them a better role model. So I started by running around the block from my house. And I lived in a place called Rathfarnham and it's kind of on a steep hill. So it was 3 miles. And the first night I tried it, I was nearly sick. I couldn't even walk it. I didn't know I'd gotten so far away from who I thought I was. Like in school, I played rugby. You know, I thought I could just go put on the gear and go out and play rugby again, but I couldn't even go 3 miles. So it took me a long time to get that fitness, like months before I could actually run that in one go. And we're talking 3 miles. Now, I only went out at night because I was terrified that the neighbors would see me and I look a sight. But eventually I managed to do that in one go. And I was so proud of myself that I entered the local 5K. And the local 5K actually runs by my house. So it wasn't a hard decision. But after, I suppose, months, I then realized like my treat in those days was to go to the local steakhouse and have a steak and a bottle of wine. And that was my life. And I thought that was a healthy thing to do. So I started to eat better. And I guess, I had a lot of time on my own. I was separated then. I only had the kids every second weekend. So when the kids went back on a Sunday night is when I would feel the most miserable. So that's when I go for my biggest run. And I used to monitor then what I ate during the day and the day before I did that run. And I noticed what made me feel better. And if something made me feel bad, like a steak, I didn't eat it anymore. And whatever it was, I just put into place. Like if pasta made me feel good, I kept it. And that to me now, is a totally different person. I mean, now I feel good. I run most days. I only eat what makes me feel good, and it's been so easy. Like it's quite simple. You just exercise and eat better, but it's really hard. It's really hard. But the
Yeah.
rewards are huge. I mean, as you probably know, Chris, you're a runner.
Yeah, you're right. It's you summed it up so nicely that it's so simple yet so hard. And the difference that your nutrition can make is that's what really I think a lot of runners out there and a lot of athletes, even just weekend warriors, they're missing a big part here because the like you mentioned there, it's really difficult when you're traveling and stuff, or if you're working hard, you could be working shifts to try and eat the right food. Especially if you don't know what you're doing, but the difference that makes,
Yeah,
you mentioned it makes you in the book. You mentioned it makes you feel a lot lighter when you're eating the right
yeah,
foods, um,
yeah.
and
Lighter,
also
lighter on your feet.
yeah, much lighter on your feet. But you mentioned that like sometimes you would feel it sitting in your stomach. Was that something
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, I've experienced that myself in the past. But going back to the actual beginning, then I suppose you mentioned that it started off with just going out and doing that 3 mile loop. How did you manage to? It must be so difficult to motivate yourself and get up when you're so unfit and so unhealthy. And I know you had that. Obviously, you had your kids as what was driving you. But how did you manage to make that? How did you manage to make that happen? How did you keep on getting out the door every time without?
yeah. That's actually the heart of that book. Um, I knew my why, so I decided I was going to do this 3 days a week, regardless. So if the sky collapsed, I was going to go out, no matter what the weather. I was going out. If I felt sick, I was going to go out, and if I had to get sick on the way, so be it. But I made this deal with myself that I wasn't going to discuss it until I got home. So if I got in from work and it was say 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night, and that was my running night, there was nothing could make me stop. Like I had a deal that I wouldn't even discuss it with myself. So I had to say nothing to myself, put on the gear, go, and then come back and I could say, okay, what was your excuse? But I always felt better when I came back. Always. Like I never felt worse, even if I had the worst run. So I mean that it took discipline and consistency. And they were possibly the hardest things because I'd say 90% of the time I didn't feel like going out for a run. Um, but I wanted to be somebody else. I wanted to be a healthy person. And I was also fighting for my kids in court at that stage then. So I wanted to prove to myself that I could see this through to the end. And I wasn't going to give up. I wasn't going to stop. And I was doing them both simultaneously. And I got better at it and I got better at it. And I mean, I remember people used to always say, or I used to read, that you should run at a speed at which you could hold a conversation. Now, even after 3 months, I thought that was a joke. And I thought I was never going to be the kind of person who could talk when running because I had difficulty breathing. But I mean, now it's a different world away. But when you're starting, they're some of the hardest things. Like if you can get your breathing going, and that took me the longest, that's what stops people from running because you can get your strength in your legs is an awful lot easier than getting your lungs in order. So it just takes time and discipline, unwavering discipline and consistency. Like you can't do it this week and not next week because it's my friend Johnny's birthday or whatever else. It doesn't work. Like it's a lifestyle, and I mean, and it's really hard because I stopped eating things, and like I used to call into my mother and she'd feed me, but then all of a sudden I wasn't eating what she was giving me, and other people would say, "Oh, what's fatty on now?" And like I was just trying to be healthier, but people seem to take almost take offense with it because I think maybe subconsciously I was making them feel bad because I was trying to get healthier. So it's really hard, and it's so much easier any time just to say, "Oh yeah, let's talk about it with the lads. We'll have 5 pints of Guinness and chips on the way home," And I mean, I can remember going down to the pub. Like I'm not really a pub kind of person, but I remember going down to the pub. There was sort of 8 of us, and the round was 8. There was 9 of us. It was 8 pints of Guinness and a glass of white wine. And the glass of white wine was for me because I had no idea what I was doing, and I thought that would be easier on me and less calories. And And of course, and then they'd always have the chipper on the way home, and I'd have to just skip it. So like, I was a bit of a joke. But you know, I mean, now I'm running, I'm fit, I'm healthy, and none of them are. So it's kind of, it pays, but it's a long road. But the rewards are big.
So how long ago was it that when you first started on this journey? Was it about 10 years or something?
It was 11 years ago when I started to run around the block in the dark at night.
Yeah. So that is a long journey that's a long time from then to now. And it's obviously been an ever evolving journey. When you first started out, I'm interested because you were talking about the breathing and stuff. In the book you mentioned you went for the run 3 times a week. Did you do any other kind of exercise? Did you do cycling or anything, or walking much?
No, at first I only did that, and that had me knackered for the rest of the week.
Yeah, so you were recovering on the other days, basically. You couldn't. Yeah.
I couldn't do it. Yeah, and I was sore, and I was always getting small injuries because I wasn't hydrating, or I didn't know anything, and everything was trial and error. So I could go for 3 miles on a Wednesday, and then by Friday I'm barely able to do it again. I was. Also, I think I was 3 stone heavier, and I didn't notice it coming on me. I only noticed it from that photograph that I saw one day. And so when I started to lose it, I started to feel great. And then I thought, okay, I'm not letting this go. Like, I just felt better in my own skin, and the whole world looked better, you know. So it's just a great feeling.
Yeah, it makes a big difference, especially when it comes to running in particular. The body weight is massive. Like if you're wearing 3 stone extra, that is a lot of extra stress on your joints. Your muscles have got to carry that. Your cardiovascular system's got to carry that. Your heart's got to pump the blood around the body. And so well done for making that journey, and well done for trying to inspire others, which you are doing, which is great. And yeah, I totally hear you when you're talking about changing your diet and not saying no to certain things, and people looking at you like you're some kind of freak or something, you know, and you get all the comments. But in this day and age now, so that's a long time ago when you started making. I know the changes were over time.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me, even a few years ago, people would be like, "What you're eating tofu and stuff," and you know, but nowadays it's like so normal. In fact, I think it's more normal to be either vegan or keto or whatever than it is to be just eating a standard Western diet, isn't it? It's like
it is now.
it's went kind of full circle, but
it's funny now because it was so hard 11 years ago. It was so hard. And I mean, I remember saying to people, when people say, let's go out for a steak, or they say, look, will you come around on Friday for dinner? And I'd say, sure. And I'd say, I just want to tell you, I'm just not eating meat at the moment. And they'd say, do you think that's a good idea? And with all seriousness, and they'd be genuinely worried for my health that I'd stop eating all the rubbish that I had been eating. And the stuff that made me slow, that made me feel bad, you know, that made me fuzzy. And they didn't realize that I was actually feeling really good since I'd stopped. So it's really hard. And I'm also celiac, so it's even harder because I don't eat wheat. So, like, I mean, nobody has invited me. Well, they do now, but there was like 10 years there where nobody asked me out for dinner because I was a nightmare. A celiac who was giving up different things at different times. I mean, it was. Yeah. Anyway, it was fine.
Yeah, because now there's options everywhere you go. If you go to a restaurant now, there's so many options for like vegan, celiac, whatever. Basically, you can get what you want. But whereas even a few years ago around here, like there wasn't really anything. There was very little. You had to go to like a specific, like either vegan cafe or something to get, or a vegetarian restaurant to get a proper.
And it wasn't very good then either. I mean, then to make up for no dairy, a lot of the time they put in extra sugar. So it's only lately, like you say, the last couple of years, the same in Dublin. There's some great vegan restaurants, cafes. Every restaurant has a vegan option. Gluten-free is an option in, I don't know, all the places I go to. Mm-hmm. So the world is changing to, it's okay now to want to take responsibility for your own health. Whereas 11 years ago, that wasn't an option.
Yeah, that's it. And it's amazing how you mentioned that people were concerned about your your health and stuff. It's amazing how these big industries have managed to like make people, and people still think this now. They're like, where'd you get your protein from? Oh, what about all your vitamins? And it's like people just don't understand nutrition because unfortunately they've been misled by a lot of different kind of agendas of industry. Yeah.
And they've done it very, very well. Like everybody years ago thought I was running into trouble, literally. And especially when I stopped eating meat and dairy. But I mean, it just came naturally. I didn't plan it. I found that if I didn't eat dairy, I could breathe better. And as you know, running is all about breathing. And it was just fantastic. Suddenly, I could take a deep breath. And eventually, I could actually talk to somebody while I was running. That thing that was ever elusive, I thought I'd never get. But I never went back on dairy as a result. And I mean, I didn't eat meat anymore as a result, because 3 days after I had a steak, I could still get a terrible stitch. I don't do that anymore. It's not part of me. There's no reason to put it into me anymore. So like, things change. It take over time. I mean, I'm lucky because my wife kind of did the same food with me all the time. And so she's, I suppose we've had the same benefit. Like, I've kind of been with a lot of runners who have changed their diet, and they go home and the husband is there with a battered burger and, you know, whatever he might be eating from the local shipper, and it's really hard for them.
Yeah, it can be
kind of lucky.
Yeah, I'm in a similar situation actually. I'm quite lucky as well in that sense. It can be really difficult, and you do touch upon that in the book, that there was difficulties that you overcame and stuff. I was going to mention something there actually about from the book. There was a quote that I found really. There's a lot of quotes in here. It's full of really inspirational quotes from some of them you've quoted different authors and things like that. But there's one that you said where it's, and this kind of moves on to the running itself, and it's more about how you feel when you're running, and it's there are times when we run, and breezes from a whole different world begin to whisper, and that really resonated with me. It was like it's really. What's your take on that? Where's that? Because I want to see if what I'm thinking is the same sort of thought process.
Well, I can tell you, because I mean, I remember it resonated with me when I first read it, and I thought that's what happens to me, because I'm getting into a world where I never knew existed, where I can feel good and healthy, and I almost feel in control, and I feel this is maybe where I belong. Like, I'm going to somewhere that I can't tell anyone. Maybe another runner would understand, but I couldn't come home and tell my next door neighbor across the garden fence that, you know, I'm feeling almost like I'm feeling things that I never knew existed before, because he's going to lock his door. And so it's a very personal thing. I guess I was just transcending from one old life that I was leaving behind of unfitness, unhealthy, always in a rush, to suddenly where I seem to have time, and I seem to be noticing what was making me feel good. And I was building my life around that, and everything that felt good, I kept in it. If it didn't, I threw it out. And like, there were a kind of an amazing 5 or 6 years. And as a result, I threw out lots of people who I thought were my friends, who turned out not to be. Kind of, maybe that was partly me as well, but that's what it meant to me. I don't know what you got from it.
What you just said at the end there about throwing out a lot of people you thought were your friends as well. You mentioned as well that you don't like that negative people. So you just don't like being around them. And I'm exactly the same. So I was like, when I saw that, I was like, 100%. That is because, and I don't know if you quote this in the book or not, because I keep seeing this quote everywhere, but keep going about quotes here, but you are the sum of the 5 people you're around the most. I think you maybe quoted that as well in there.
Yeah. Well, when I read that, I mean, the first thing I did was look at my friends, and I thought, why is he or she my friend? I never get anything but negativity from them. Like, I had to question it. So I would say, okay, I'm going to try and be around more positive people, because I really needed it. Like, it was really hard to be kind of doing this stuff. It felt very much on your own. Like, and it was working for me as a thing, and negative people weren't working. So to leave them behind was a great feeling. Like even up to 5 years after, we wouldn't see each other that much anymore. I even unfriended people like on Facebook and things because all the comments are just negative. And it's like, I mean, the way I look at it, if somebody says something I don't like, I don't go back to them. I don't look at it, but I don't go in with a negative comment because that means there's something in you that wants to see them fail or do badly. So if somebody is going out of their way to do that, I thought it was okay to avoid them.
Yeah, totally, man. And negativity, I think it's contagious, isn't it? It's like,
yeah, it is like positivity.
It's spread. It's so positivity. So the more you surround yourself with positive people, the way I like to see it in the bigger picture of all things is, if we surround ourselves with positive people all the time, there's going to be more positive people in the world, isn't there? So we can try and get rid of the negative. We're not going to kill them off, but we can try and get rid of the negativity, you know, because it doesn't make any, and it's not about being all like, oh, the world's fabulous all the time. You know, it's about being realistic, but being positive and being, instead of being problem focused all the time, being opportunity focused. And I feel that when I read your story, I just feel it's like you see an opportunity and it's like you're taking the steps and then you're detailing the steps in the book. To kind of how to move forward from that. And so this book obviously is great, but you are starting on you've done your second book, is that right? You've written it already?
Yes, yeah. I've actually, the next book is finished. It'll be out in April. It's a very different type of book. It's called From Marathon to Ultra. So this book is 10 years on from the first book, where now I'm running 100-mile races. In the first book, it was how an ordinary person got to do something basic, like just become a better person. And it was very much on how I did it, as opposed to I tried hard not to preach or tell anyone how they should do it, just how it works for me. And so all the people that I've trained and run with, like, I know it resonates with a lot of people. I'm kind of hoping now the second book will also resonate with people, because I made so many mistakes. And I put all the mistakes in, like running 100 miles, and like the first 100 miles, I mean, it's almost embarrassing how unprepared I was. And I thought I was there and I was ready for it. And like tears, pain, blistered feet. I had to walk the last 40 something miles because I couldn't run. And like, I was just so badly prepared. But I went and I learned how to do it better. Instead of saying, okay, I can't do this, I went and I trained for the next one, and I trained better and I trained smarter. And then I did that one with my first one was in Belfast to Dublin. I think it's at the end of the book that you have at the moment. It's the last pages. But then I trained for one a year later in Nottingham Forest, the Robin Hood 100, I think it's called. And I learned an awful lot from the first one. I put it into the second. Then the second one, a year later, I did a third one. And everything that I did wrong in the first two, I kind of made a plan, and I planned for the third one. So in this book, the first half of it is all very personal and how I did it and everything that went wrong and right. But I actually funneled the whole thing in to a chart, a peak performance chart, which has 20 things in it on training for an ultra. This one specifically is about 100 miles, but it could be, I mean, like about a 50 mile or whatever you want. But it's very much how to do it. So if you wanted to run 100 miles, this will give you like 20 things to do every single week for your training period, say 24 weeks or 32 weeks, depending on the time you've got. Whereas in my first 100-mile race, as in any other race, I just ran. I didn't do anything else. I just ran. And now I have a list of 20 things that make up how to feel better. And one of those things is actually laughter, because I can remember in one of the marathons, I was it was so hard, and I was training so hard, and I didn't think I was going to make it, that I forgot to enjoy it and to have fun in it, because the actual race doesn't matter that much. It's if it takes 32 weeks to get there, that's the important bit, not the day it takes running, obviously. So it's who you are when you get there that I like about myself. I like that I had the discipline to train. I like that I could better what I did before. I like how I feel. I like who I am. I like the way I eat. Like it's the way to get there as opposed to that day. Now, obviously, it helps on that day if you can do better than you did the last time. Yeah.
It's it sounds really good, man. I'm looking forward to actually to diving in and having a look at your 20 things. The thing is, when it comes to ultra running, this is what I love about ultra running. It's so pure. There's no cheat. There's no shortcuts. There's no like
no.
In many other sports, and no disrespect to other sports, but in a lot of other sports, there are ways to get ahead of the game by using different tactics and stuff. And you can have coaches and stuff, but with ultra running, it just takes time and hard work, doesn't it? It really does. But so 20 things. So what you've mentioned, laughter, which I love, because I use smiling more than laughter, but it's the same principle really. Is whenever I see somebody in a race, any race, I try and always smile. I don't think I've ever seen a photo of me in a race anywhere where I'm like, oh, you see these photos of people dying. Like I feel like that on the inside if I'm doing a 5K or effort or something or pushing really hard, but I try and always smile and laugh, and it just makes you feel so much better, doesn't it? What would you? That's one. I don't want you to give all your secrets away or anything out of the book, but if you would you share? So that'd be one. Would you share two more of your 20 pieces of advice for somebody who's looking to move on to the ultra marathon distance?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, just even before the 20 week, the 20, like the peak performance chart, I call it. Even before that starts, it's like there's 6 weeks, and there's actually 8 weeks before that. It starts with 2 weeks of nothing. So you totally rest. You do nothing but walk. That's because in all my experience, I come into these things, and let's say my long run on the first week might be a 10 or 12 mile race run. I mean, so I come in training for that 10 or 12 miles. So if the first 2 weeks you do nothing, it just gives you time to heal. So all your little niggly injuries that you might have, you're kind of feeling really good then by the time we start.
That's a great piece of advice. That is something that I would totally recommend. Is if somebody does like a hard race or something, is after that have either a week or even 2 weeks completely off. Yeah. Just maybe a bit of swimming, walking, cycling, low impact, no running. And people and that like you say, that stops that risk of injury from being so high, because the previous niggles that you've gained. Give the muscles and tendons and ligaments time to recover and heal. So yeah, brilliant piece of advice, man. Go ahead.
After that, we go into it's a series of tests that you do on which are in the book and diagrams on how to find out where you're strong, where you're weak in your body, back, core, calf, quads, etc. And you do all these tests, and then for the following 6 weeks, a couple of times a week, you will strengthen yourself with stretches. So you might not be flexible at all. And usually runners who've never stretched, as I found out, are so inflexible, because like your glutes being the most important, because you use them more than anybody else. And if they're not, like if they don't have some form of elasticity, you're going to be in trouble like 6 weeks or 10 weeks or 12 weeks later. So if you can start off the peak performance chart feeling really good in your own skin, and like in ways you never felt before. Like if you can bend down and touch the floor and pick something up without noticing, without going, oh, this. So anyway, that's what it does. And then you come into the peak performance chart, which you asked me about. So a couple of the things there. One, apart from running, 4 of them are different types of running, like recovery run, long run, and so on. One unusual one of those Well, let's just start with mental resilience would be one. So you work on your own mental resilience. And I mean, I do talk about ways how, and I mean, I'll come back to that in a second. A second one would be hydration. If you're not in the habit of being all the time hydrated, you're nowhere near your, as you know, being a runner, because you just wouldn't be able. Otherwise, you run into all sorts of problems. So hydration is something you need to do all the time. You need to be fully hydrated every day, not just on race days. And that way, you don't get, calf tears, you don't get hamstring pulls. Like, you can avoid so many injuries by being hydrated all the time. Another one of my favorites in this would be education, would be another one. So I would suggest that people take 45 minutes 3 times a week. And if it was for you, if it was an ultra run that you're training for 100 miles, that you either read about it and you watch videos about it, or you listen to podcasts about it. Because once you focus, like there's this saying, where focus goes, energy flows. And if you focus on what you want to do, suddenly you start picking up stuff everywhere. Not that it wasn't always there, you just never noticed before, because you start getting you're open to it. I mean, I went back to college, and I went and I studied sports psychology. So for me, I was mad into getting all of that information and all the help that I could to make the next race easier. But I mean, not everyone has the time or the means to go back to college. But I think it's probably exactly the same if you just did something for 45 minutes, 3 times a week, and fed yourself the positivity for what you're doing. Because there's no doubt a lot of the time you're going to be listening to somebody else saying, "Oh, you're running again at the weekend. You're not going to come out with us on Friday, or do you have to do it again this weekend? I thought you ran last weekend." And there's going to be people saying, "Oh, there's Jonathan. He doesn't eat this. He doesn't eat that." And it's just, there's an awful lot of negativity coming in at you. So if you can build your own positivity through, "This is what I'm doing," you feel better. And I know this from experience.
I love that. I love that. And going back to the whole negativity thing as well, and the people you surround yourself with, you essentially become, is what the quote says, is that if you're listening to podcasts, watching videos, reading books, listening to audio books, all these different resources, or going to college even if you can, or whatever, if you're doing that and your focus is on the race, that's your goal, and you're learning all these things, you're just going to become, eventually you'll become a master of it, won't you? And
yes, you will. And you'll also start to glow, and people will wonder, why is he looking so good? And it's not just because you're getting exercise and you're eating well, because you feel good in your own self. And then people want to be around you all of a sudden, whereas before everybody was avoiding you like the plague. And suddenly your people seem to be more interested in you because you're more content in what you're doing and you're buzzed about it. Like, everybody likes somebody that's buzzed about what they do. I mean, if you ask somebody, how's it going? Like, what are you up to? And they go, "Oh, nothing, it's a different thing."
would you class yourself as obsessed with running?
Possibly. I don't want to be, but yeah, people have said that to me.
I think it's a good thing. I think as long as you have other things as well, which I'm sure you do, I think it's a good thing to be obsessed with something like that, something that's healthy,
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's true. Like, I do a lot of other things, but they would all be, mainly health orientated, because I like that buzz and I like that feeling, and I like the people that it attracts. Like, there's one thing about healthy people, is that healthy people take responsibility for themselves. Whereas a lot of people who aren't healthy in any way, like, go into a hospital and you'll see them everywhere. When something goes wrong, they want somebody else to fix it. Go to the doctor regularly, get tablets for it, whatever it is. But healthy people take responsibility for themselves, and they decide, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to get healthy. I'm going to give this and this and this up, and I'm going to put this in and this in. and it makes such a difference. And those kind of people are lovely to be around. Like, it's just a nice thing about running is it attracts really good people. I never knew that, of course, until I started running. And I mean, the first few years, I spent most of my time hiding, like running in the dark, and going into a race, going at the very back of the race, like it only creeps up on you, and somebody says, would all runners move to the front or something, and you think, oh, that includes me, that feeling at first. It's good. Nice to be around healthy people.
Yeah, it's so positive, isn't it? And I really miss that sort of race atmosphere when you, even if it's just a park run, I mean, they're hopefully starting up. They do park runs in Ireland as well, don't they? Of course they do.
Yeah, I love the park runs. They do them in Ireland. They haven't had them obviously for the last year.
Yeah.
With COVID-19, but they're really fabulous.
Yeah, it's free and it's just an easy way for somebody. I mean, not saying a 5K is easy, but a 5K is a manageable, first achievable goal for somebody, which was one of your first goals, wasn't it, in your journey as well. And it's just great to, when you get around those people that are doing that as well, you hear about their struggles, you hear about their successes, and it just, you start to learn so much about the nutrition, about like race strategy, mindset, all these different things. It's amazing, isn't it? It really is.
It is. I mean, I remember back to my first 5K, and it nearly killed me. I thought, because I was running 3 miles, which is sort of 5K at the time, I thought I could do it, but I didn't realize the difference it makes when you're with hundreds of other people, because I always did it on my own in the dark. So suddenly I was with all these people, and they all looked fabulous. Like, there was nobody there looked like nobody there looked like they were close to a heart attack. That look, like everybody looked really good. And of course, I ran as fast as I could, and I must have been 1K in, and I thought, I'm not going to make this. And then I tried to latch on to people who were really slow, and I couldn't. And like, when I finished it, that was it. I was not going to run again. It was just too hard, and I felt sick, and I was embarrassed. And but the next day I thought, I'm going to do that better. I prefer, I like those people. I'm going to get there.
I can actually relate to that. I mean, I wasn't in the same situation as you. I was never overweight or really, I was never in a place of really bad health, especially during my first park run I done. I was reasonably fit. I wasn't a runner at that time, but I remember pushing myself really hard because I thought, well, I'm going to just go for it. And I think I must have been on the last kilometer, and I was just like, I am never doing this again, because a 5K as well. It's different, isn't it? Marathons are painful, which you detail in the book quite well, actually, really well, actually. And but 5Ks are like, they're just brutal, aren't they? Because if you're going for a max effort, it's just
it's every step.
Yeah, it is. And in the book, you mentioned about I really like the way that you detail each year, not every marathon you've done, but a lot of the marathons you've done, you detail the story, and it's amazing how well you've actually managed to break it down into, like, at this mile I felt like this, and the highs and lows.
Yeah.
What's it like for somebody who's not ran a marathon before, maybe thinking about doing a marathon? What's it like feeling those highs and lows, and then finishing on the finishing line?
It's I mean, people say that it's life-changing. I'm not sure if it is. It's the journey to get there that is massive. And like last year, there was several runners who I sort of trained, and we ran our first marathon. And when we started, none of them had run a mile before. And they were giddy when we got to the stage of running our first 5K. And they were so giddy. And then when we got to doing a 10K, and then a few months later, we did a half marathon. And eventually, it took us a year, we did a marathon. And I relived it because I did it again with them. And the pain, the tears, everything in it, it's so emotional. And it's so personal, because nobody looks at you and goes, oh, there's a fabulous runner. Like, if you're running your first marathon, like, you look a sight more than likely. So it's whatever's inside you, and it lets you know that you can actually do this. And to think that, like, I used to look back and go, I couldn't run 3, and now I can do 26, and I can do 26, and then I'd go for a faster time and try and beat something. But the feeling, it's special. Is all I can say. And the reason why I remember every point in the marathon is because they were so painful. I mean, I was never an athlete. Like I never had the figure of a Kenyan. I worked really hard for this. And I mean, I do a running course now, an online course that we're working on at the moment, which is how to run your first marathon. But everything in that course, I have learned over the last 11 years. So I could almost say I have suffered everything in it to be able to talk about it. And I mean, it's not always pretty, because it's hard, and it's simple, but it's hard. And if you're prepared to do that, there's no feeling like it that I've ever come across. And there's nobody going to come up to you at the end other than really close friends or relations and say, "Oh, that was fabulous. You ran a great race." Because I mean, one of the marathons I did was in Vienna. There was 40,000 people. So I think 30,000 were ahead of me. So nobody's going to say, "Well done, great race. You came 32,000 out of 40, or whatever it might be." So it's personal. If it makes you feel good, it's fabulous.
Yeah, man. And so this online course, is this something that you can that you do through videos, or how does that work exactly? I've not seen any of this.
This is for somebody who wants to run a marathon. Like, if I know if you could be stuck in the last year through lockdown or whatever reason, and you've decided with your friends, whatever, you want to do something fabulous, like run a marathon. And I think that is fabulous for anyone who runs a marathon. So what I do is, like myself and Fiona my wife has designed this course. She's also a runner. So it's over 18 weeks. And you get, because the training schedule, it would be 4 runs a week. You would get 4 emails a week. So in all, like, you're going to see me an awful lot, and probably get sick of me and Fiona, but maybe to a lesser extent. So you would get 4 videos a week. So if it was hill running, it would be tips on hill running, and I would be hill running while I was being videoed. So I'd show you the good parts, the bad parts, the bits to watch out for, and so on. And that would be the same then for everything else that would be part of running. Because when you start running, you tend to think you just run. And I mean, that obviously is the first part. But then there's things like there's hydration, there's eating well, there's eating what fuels you. And then there's all the other things that I bring into it. Again, like mental resilience, like that I mentioned earlier. But what I do to build my mental resilience, which would be one of the videos that I talk about, is that I swim in the sea every day, in the Atlantic. And it's cold, this doesn't cut it out. Actually, it's freezing. And it's just something that I know that if I can overcome that, as I do every day, if I can overcome fear, pain, and panic, I can almost overcome anything. Because as you know, from running a marathon, especially your first, there's 100 reasons or more as to why you should stop. Now, very few of them are real, but you don't know that. So if you can overcome panic and say, okay, I'll keep going. If I'm still here in 10 minutes, maybe I'll keep going again then. And, but you don't give up. And like that mental resilience, like swimming, builds that in you and makes you stronger. And that's just one of the things. But it's a course that you can do online, and a lot of people, they don't have somebody to run with. So if you don't, I'm your accountability partner, because you will be talking to me every week, and you're seeing my face, listening to me, getting a video from me for a week. Also other just motivational tips and stuff that I learned, like when I started doing my first. I made so many mistakes. Like, for starters, I picked a marathon that I would know nobody at, like in Rome. And I thought if I went to Rome, it'd be fine because nobody would know me. And I mean, it was random. And it would just seem to be 3 months away. And I thought, okay, I could train in 3 months. to do this. But the amount of things that could have made it easier for me had I known, that's what I've tried to put into this. So, I mean, there's nothing in this course that we do that I haven't done myself. So I'm not telling you anything that hasn't been lived through. And even if it's hard and if I messed up, I tell you about it and I tell you how to do it, in a better way for you.
Yeah, you've been through the journey already, so you're that much better able to understand and resonate with people's problems, and that's massive as well. That whole training partner accountability thing. I mean, for most people, running is quite a solitary sport, isn't it? But having a and I want to come back to the swimming in the Atlantic as well, the cold water immersion. But this is in my mind. You mentioned it in the book actually that you started off on your own, and you mentioned it tonight as well actually, that you were running on your own trying to kind of hide, and then you had your training partner who you ended up doing a lot of races with, and that makes it so much more, because if one of you on one day is feeling down, the other one brings the other person up, don't they, and vice versa. So that's really
right. Yeah, it's invaluable actually. I mean, I didn't know that initially, but when I did have a training partner for a race, it was fabulous because we could bounce off each other, and I could say, "Oh God, I feel really bad today," and I'd say what I had for lunch or whatever, and then we both learn not to have that, and maybe like you don't have a bean salad at lunchtime thinking it's going to give you energy, and every little thing we did, and also I couldn't miss a single training session because I was going to let her down, and the same, so we had this pact almost where unspoken we were always there for each other and we were always a positive influence, and it was fabulous. The difference, there was no comparison. It was enjoyable. I enjoyed every single part of it, and then of course you have someone to talk to about it and share it with, and that's really exciting because nobody else really wants to hear about it. I mean, I think as you see, there's a cartoon in the other book. Unless you fell flat on your face and hurt yourself, nobody wants to know.
I love the little cartoons. They're great. I've not seen them in since, when's the last time I read a paper? I was probably like 12 years old or something. And it's like the little cartoons that you used to get in the papers. And you touched on there as well, like you were learning from each other's mistakes. I mean, if two people are making mistakes and you're learning twice as many, you're making twice as many mistakes and learning from twice as many, so you're learning that much faster, aren't you? What's the old saying, isn't there? Learn from other people's mistakes instead of your own. That's it's really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for everything, especially for injuries, if that's how we learned. We weren't drinking enough because we get a calf injury, or one of us would have the wrong shoes on because the difference from heel to toe would be 17 mil, whereas we eventually learned that the lower it is, the less chance of injury you get. Little things like that you never know unless somebody tells you, or unless you do it. So it just pushes you from here to here, and gives you confidence as well.
And it can be very difficult just now for people to get training partners, especially the last year or so, due to all the restrictions and stuff in place. So having that online course, it really is going to be a really helpful place, I think, for people to go and have that accountability, because not everybody can keep themselves accountable. Some people can do it, but it takes a lot of discipline. Whereas if you have somebody like yourself there every day saying, have you went and done that run? How did it go?
Yeah.
And they can then get the feedback and all that sort of good stuff. So I think that'll be really useful for people.
But apart from just me, we'll also try and have it in sections. So March is a big time for races, even though they might be virtual. So prior to that, we'd have a group set up. So if you're doing the course, you'd have access to everybody who's in the course. So you can talk to each other. I know that's the kind of thing I would have loved, to be able to say to somebody, I nearly died this evening, what's going on? I thought I was getting really fit, I thought it was great. And tonight I just collapsed. I had no strength. I sweated profusely. All the things that happen to you in the beginning when you don't know what's going on. You don't know that you think you have an awful cold, but you're just eliminating stuff because you gave up some foods to run better. Lots of little things that help when you talk to each other. and you know you can get through them, and you know all those fabulous things. But they're small.
Surrounding yourself with more positive people as well. That's going to be going to be so useful. I'm going to ask you a question then, thinking back to your journey. How, of all the mistakes you've made from the whole journey, what do you think would be the number one lesson that you've learned that you could tell people to try and avoid making that same mistake if they were saying it in the same journey as you, just getting into fitness or into running?
Wow, that's a huge question because there's so many.
You can rattle off a few if you want. There's no pressure to pick the biggest one. You can rattle off a few. Quick fire round.
My first mistake is probably thinking that I was better than I am, and increasing what I do too quickly. Whereas, like in training for a marathon, I might miss. Let's say you kind of increase it. You might be doing 10 miles one week, the long run 12 the next week. I would miss one, and then I go back and I do a longer distance the following week, and I would get injured. So I just wouldn't follow. It's like my wife always says, I have difficulty. I can't even follow a recipe. Like I have to do it my own way. So it's that stubbornness that's detrimental to me. That was one of my mistakes. So I got so many like calf injuries, and then I'd be out for 4 weeks. And I just wasn't sensible about it. I always thought I can do this. Like willpower alone will get me through, and it did a lot of the time. But it wasn't half as enjoyable as if I'd just taken a bit more care.
Do you think you think part of that though? Sometimes I like to look at injuries in a bit of a funny way. Nobody likes being injured. They're not good if they stop you from running, of course. They're terrible, actually. But I like to kind of take a positive spin on injuries as well. Is how many lessons did you learn from all the injuries you've had? It's
oh yeah, there's no question. Yeah.
So there's
no question.
There is a good side to them as well, in a way. But I find it's the ones that recur over and over again, which are the most common ones as well. It's like, are you really learning the lessons there? But that's great advice, man. You can't underestimate how important it is to build that mileage slowly and sensibly, and have the right kind of recovery weeks, recovery runs, easy runs, and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Another one now, which would be one of my biggest, and I only learned this when I went back to study sports psychology, is that self-talk. Now, this is in the new book. It's part of the peak performance chart. It's one of the sessions you'll be working on weekly for the full training period. But self-talk is something that I used to be really poor at. And I had no trouble calling myself names. And like when I get to a stage where I felt like crashing out of a race, like I hit the wall, I was miserable, and I'd run out of energy, I would say stuff like, you stupid fat git, like keep going, and for Christ's sake, what are you doing? And everything was negative. And I've learned the power of self-talk now. And now I would only say things like I'm much nicer to me now. And I only say things that are helpful. Like, it's okay, you've got this. Just take it easy for a mile or two, slow down, you'll get back into it. But everything is because I know I will, because I've done it before. Whereas when you do your first race, you don't know that. And just being nicer to myself it's massive for how you perform, for how you feel. Just those two words, self-talk, very important. And I was really bad at it. I mean, I call myself names I can't say here. I used to say terrible things.
Yeah, that voice in your head is so powerful, and not just for running, but life in general, isn't it? It really, again, it's like, keep going back to the same thing again about negative people. But if you've got a negative voice in your head, that's another negative person in a way, But a lot of top coaches and athletes talk about this a lot, sports psychology, and that voice in your head. You don't necessarily have to be saying nice things all the time. You could be saying things that are driving yourself forward. I've got David Goggins in my mind right now, but it's how are you saying that to yourself, and is it helping you get to where you want to be, or is it hindering you? You know, if you're saying things that are really nasty to yourself, that's not going to be good. But motivational things that are great, aren't they? What kind of things would you did you have like any? Do you have like any mantras you'd use or anything like that in your head, or because that's quite a common technique, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that is quite common in marathon distance to get you through. And I would like the main thing is to you're good at this. Trust yourself. You're trained and you're ready for this. Rather than feel, oh God, I shouldn't have entered. What was I thinking? I'm going to embarrass myself, my wife, my kids. Everyone will be mortified, and like all those feelings come in on you. I'm just not good enough for this. I shouldn't have even tried. But the way I learned to counter it is to just tell yourself the actual facts, and not opinions. That I am trained for this. I am ready for this. I'm actually not going to die. So just keep going, and just go for the next mile, and just work on what you've got and what's real, and not let yourself go, oh, you're useless, like all the negativity.
Yeah.
So, now, I mean, that doesn't work as well I find, for an ultra. I don't know how you find it, but like I know in 100-mile race on mile 70 or 80 or 85, that self-talk doesn't work as well, because then I have to be trained. I have to be everything. Everything has to be in place, and I just have to know it. And I have to know that I've done the stretches. I've done every single thing I could cover, like 20 things from my peak performance chart, and I know I'm good enough for this. This is a bad patch. When I get over this hill, I'm going to feel much better, and I'm going to come right back into it. So it's confidence. The more that you do to make yourself better, the more confident you are, and therefore the easier it is to get through those bad patches.
Do you find yourself in an ultra marathon situation more so you reach into previous experiences where you've overcome difficulty? So you've like maybe in your training you've had like a really difficult day or something of training, or a previous race even, and you go, well, that was way harder than what I'm doing right now. It can be difficult to think like that when you're in a situation when you're feeling that pain, but if you can do that, it's powerful.
It's absolutely powerful. Yeah, I mean it's why you try and remember all of the bad experiences, and it's why I write about them. It's because they're the most precious experiences, because I know how to avoid them, and I avoid them by doing something better. Whatever went wrong, don't forget it. Like, keep it in the front of your mind, because that's what's going to help you.
So do you keep a detailed training journal for every session you do, or for your races, or main? How do you do that?
No. Well, I do for every race, but I'm pretty disciplined with training. Like, I would have a calendar on the wall, monthly, and I would write the mileage sort of every day, and then weekly at a glance I can see, okay, I did 40 miles this week, 50, 60, 20, whatever it might be, and I know that I'm on target at a glance. So I just keep an eye on it, and I have days. Like, I mean, yesterday I went for a run over the mountain here where I live, and after 3 miles I was shocking. Like, I didn't have the energy. I thought of going home, and it was supposed to be like, it was a 9-mile run over the mountain, and like, it's hard, but not too hard. But I know that from experience that after the 3 miles, the first climb, I'm going to be okay, and just go through it. Just go step by step. Don't be thinking about mile 8 or 9. Like, how am I going to get there? And I could see a storm was coming in and everything was going wrong. But I know that no matter what comes in, it's going to be okay. And it was okay. So, like, having that knowledge and the confidence that, no matter how small or short your run is, it's going to be okay. And you are actually okay to do it.
The mind is so powerful, isn't it? It's so that it amazes me how, and I've experienced this, how powerful the mind can be in terms of, I've pitched up at the starting line of a race before and just felt like I've had a really bad night's sleep. maybe had a couple of beers the night before, didn't eat the exact food I was planning to eat because, it could be on some island somewhere at a race, for example. I'm actually thinking of an exact experience. And then at the start line, I just go, no, just get rid of that, forget everything. You've done all the training, let's go for it. And then you get into, and sometimes I've actually had some of my best performances when I least expected them, because I managed to flip a switch in my head and use the mindset over the.
It's a brilliant feeling, isn't it?
It really is.
I had something similar before my first ultra, which was a 50K. And I was so scared that I slept for 1 hour the night before, from 10 o'clock till 11 o'clock at night. And then I was awake until 5 o'clock in the morning when I had to head to the race. And I was so sure that my race was over before it started. But I spent, I suppose, the last hour going to the race at the starting line, switching out, thinking, this is my day. It doesn't matter what happened yesterday. I'm going from here. And that switching over, you realize the power. And it's a wonderful feeling. And then when the race is finished, you think, that didn't affect me at all, that 1 hour sleep. So much of our behavior is how we think we're supposed to behave.
Yeah, totally. And there's actually a lot of, I've heard this in the past before, that even if you don't sleep at all right before a race, that you just can't sleep at all, it's probably not going to affect your performance that much unless you mentally let it affect you. But there's also there's a lot of research recently coming out about, if you got the first hour there, okay, that's good, because the first few hours of sleep, as you probably know, are when you get the deep sleep. As long as you hit some deep sleep the night before, that's all to do with your system, like your actual bodily functions and all that sort of stuff. The later part of the sleep, the light sleep and the REM REM sleep, not really is necessary for sports performance. If you're trying to remember stuff and do like more logical tasks, then perhaps. But yeah, it's amazing how you can feel so crappy, can't you? But then still still off.
Sleep is one of the 20 in the peak performance chart, because it's so important. And I mean, I never realized until relatively recently how important sleep is. Like, it's the difference for everything in your body to work. And nothing actually works if you don't have regular sleep.
Yeah, 100%. I'm a massive fan of sleep. You've probably got something similar. I don't know, like a Fitbit device or something, but I track my sleep with this Aura Ring. I've actually normally got them on because the sun's just set there. I've got these weird blue blocking glasses that I wear at night time, and all this stuff, and the room's like set at a specific temperature. I try and get like a good 3+ hours of deep sleep every night. And then, because I want to clarify there, when I was talking about only getting a couple hours of sleep, that's like the night before a race. You definitely don't want to be doing that consecutive nights, otherwise you're definitely going to be suffering, So
absolutely, yeah, because it's okay to have the nerves and all before the race.
Yeah,
but yeah, continuously, you do need to be looking after that.
Yeah, definitely. Sleep and nutrition, and energy management, I think, are just so important if you want to be doing well. You mentioned you live near the. I'm just curious, the mountains. What mountain do you live near? Is it, or what range is it?
I live in the south of Ireland, in West Cork, and there's this peninsula here called Sheep's Head.
Ah, right.
And so I kind of live on the side of a mountain, and I mean, like, I suppose from one side of Sheep's Head to the other side, not lengthways. I mean, it might be it's 6 or 7 miles, but you have to go over the mountain to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the mountain range might run for, I don't know, 10 to 20 miles all along it. It's a bit like a toe, because there's several of them. So it's like a foot in the west of Ireland, and like there's the Beara, and like there's several all along. But it's a particularly nice place. I mean, I'm lucky to be here. It's super, especially in lockdown.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of pictures on Instagram. It looks like a lovely place, and I'm guessing that's where so if you live in the peninsula there, I'm guessing that's where you go for the sea dips, which I was going to come back to actually. So do you do that every day? Do you jump in the sea? I'd be curious to know what your routine is. Do you go for a run down there, or how do you do that?
Well, I'll tell you, in January, I got COVID-19 and I got it very badly. And I mean, for 6 weeks, I had difficulty breathing and a great difficulty. Like I couldn't walk up the stairs in one go. And my resting heart rate normally at any stage is under 50. Like it's normally 49 would be my average resting heart rate while I'm doing nothing. And for the time I had COVID, even if I was lying in bed, it was over 100. And if I did something like got up and had a shower, it could go up to 150. Now, my heart rate prior to that has never hit 150. Like even running up a steep hill, I'd have difficulty getting 150. So it really affected my breathing and my heart rate. And even I could be just sitting down on the couch and next thing my heart rate would race. So it took over my insides and it wreaked havoc. So what we did was, we'd heard about, myself and Fiona, the benefits of cold water swimming. So being on the Atlantic, it just happened that at the end of January, we moved to West Cork from the city, from Dublin. And I mean, it was good timing, but it was bad timing because I had COVID at the time. So just energy-wise, it wasn't great. But once we got here, we thought, okay, what have we got here? We have the sea, like less than 2 miles away, just down there. So every day we go down and swim. Now, the first day I'd manage 10 seconds and I'd start to hyperventilate because it was too cold. And my lungs weren't fixed yet. Like I wasn't back to normal. I couldn't run. So we did it every day. And I mean, it was so cold that it could take 2 hours to heat up after we came out of the water. And I mean, now we're on day, I think, 44 consecutive days. And it just made my breathing work better. And when I came out of the water, I would be breathing much better for 4 or 5 hours. And then my breathing would get bad again. And now I'm perfectly cured from COVID. I feel fabulous. I'm running up mountains. I'm running down them. I mean, my long run is up to 9 miles. Whereas I couldn't walk 1 mile, 1 kilometer a few months ago. But the sea swimming is curing. Like it's just, the healing benefits are fabulous. And not only that, but it scares the shit out of me every day because every time I go down there, I know I have to get in because it's just what we do. It's a really good buzz. And then every time we leave there, I mean, now on average, we'd be in the water 5 to 10 minutes. But it's fabulous because I know I can do it and I know it's good for me. It's like running and it's just part of my day every single day. And it works.
It's so beneficial. I find it's like, if I get in this, I do cold showers most days, nearly every day, if I don't have time to get down to the sea. But I have no excuse either. I live a couple of miles from the sea, from the North Sea here. So it's not far. And quite often I run down and basically either just jump in fully clothed or strip off and get in. But then you've got to get your clothes back on and it's a nightmare. So
yes, it is.
But it's great, and just the energy you feel. There's definitely something about getting into the actual sea, I find. I don't know if it's or a river or a loch or a lake, whatever. That natural feeling of just getting in there, and then you get out and it's like it's a whole other world, isn't it? It really is.
It is. There's something about it. There's something going on that you don't see. I mean, I tried the cold showers, but I found it almost too difficult in the beginning. Like I tried 2 minutes and I just couldn't breathe in it. Now maybe it was just too early from COVID, but I found the sea a bit easier, even though it was an awful lot colder. But there's something about the energy of the sea that is healing. Now, I know that it does a lot of things for your health, but curing COVID is another, you can add to it.
Yeah, well, it's amazing that you've said that because you're mentioning that it's healing. Do you ever look into the effects of earthing and stuff when you get into the sea? Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Well, it's like that's a bit woo-woo kind of stuff. There's not a lot of scientific data on it yet, but there is more and more coming out as time goes on. But there's definitely, you just feel it, don't you? You can just feel it when you get in there, man. It's really powerful.
those things that's really hard to explain unless you do it. But I know that they say that people who swim or do cold water showers, whatever, daily, don't get colds, you don't get sick, and people are like, I know your circulatory system, you just work better. And it's like every time you get in, you give your body an overhaul, and you self-regulate yourself. It's a great feeling. After you've had COVID, you really realize that how little control we have over so many things. So if you can find something positive that is healthy, grab it.
Yeah, totally. And do you use the Wim Hof method or anything before you get in? Do you use breathing technique?
No, I don't. I don't do the breathing. I just get in slowly. Now, before I had COVID, I would dive in. But now I'm a bit more precious about myself, and I just slowly get in, but I stay in for an awful lot longer. And just by doing it every day, my body knows what's coming, and I don't have that urge to scream anymore. I can quite happily stay in there for a long time now. As you know, and then I come out and I'm glowing. It's a great feeling.
Yeah, it's great. And I'm the same as you, actually. The cold showers I find much harder than the immersion. Even an ice bath, I can do an ice bath easier than I can do a cold shower. It's something about the water coming onto you. I don't know there's a lot of different theories behind this. But yeah, it's so powerful. It's been great. I think we'll wrap up with where should we take it to wrap it up? Should we take it back to running again? So we've talked about cold immersion. Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Where's Jonathan Cairns going to be running wise? What's the plan, if there is one?
Well, there is one for sure. I would like to see myself in 5 years' time doing what I do now, only doing it so much better, because every time I learn new things, as you do, as we all do, just to note them. Like, one of the biggest things for me is fuel. So it's food, and it's food with running and exercise. So I'd like to be just so much better at what I do, like in helping other people to run, and especially people, beginners, because it's so much harder to do that 3 miles around the block than it is for me to do a 100-mile race now, because I know I can do the 100 miles. Back then I didn't know I could do 3 miles, and I really struggled. So to help people doing their first runs, their first races, their first marathon is something I'd like to be much better at, and I'd like to be doing. But I'd also like to have my own book out to show people what I know is fuel for runners. Because everything that I do, and food-wise, I note it, we write it down, and I use it. I use it on the long runs, I use it on the short runs, the hill runs, and everything is logged and recorded, because it's where everything is at. Like when you're running long distances, what you put into you is vital. So I'd like to be able to share that with everyone. I'd like to have it that fine-tuned.
Bananas and dates. That's the secret fuel. Not necessarily at the same time, but bananas and dates for me. That's that's like rocket fuel. It's just.
Yeah, it was for me too. But dates is something I couldn't do a lot of.
Right.
In a marathon, I used to use fuel with dates. But now it's everything. It's what you eat beforehand. It's what you eat straight after your training to make you strong enough for the training the next day. It's what you eat on your day off. All of those things, so that they're fueling you and giving you energy and giving you turning the switch on, as opposed to making you groggy and fall asleep.
Yeah.
All those good things.
So it's on that subject as well. Actually, in the book, if you pick up a copy, anyone who's listening, it does have a load of recipes in here as well. I haven't actually got to the recipes yet, but I'm sure there'll be some in there that I'll have a look at and try out. But I'm a bit like you, Jonathan. I tend to just kind of go my own way with the recipes and start adding my own stuff in. So I'll maybe have my own little twist on it, and I'll send you a picture across.
Absolutely do. The thing is that with food, it's different for all of us. So what works for me might not work for you. So
Yeah.
you would tweak a recipe, even though those recipes in that book are quite straightforward, but you tweak it as to how you like it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't like it, there's no way you're going to eat it.
Yeah.
So I mean, to me, the really important points in those recipes are the recovery drinks and the recovery foods, and the bits that make you feel good after a long, like if you did a 20-mile training run, that make you feel great the next day. And that depends on what you eat straight after your run. So those little bits are possibly more important than the recipes that you'd have day to day.
I have a feeling that you're a big fan of green smoothies after a long run. Or am
I drink green smoothies. Yeah, after a long run, I tend to eat more of a carb drink, like with oats in it, and I'd have Sun Warrior protein powder just to help my muscles so that I don't feel sore in the morning, and all those things. I might have a banana thrown in and a bit of peanut butter and all that stuff.
Just tastes like a chocolate milkshake, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
So this is the crazy thing. People see me at work, and I've got this big smoothie jug, and it looks like brown glue, and I'm like, but it tastes amazing, It's just.
I know it does look disgusting, but it is amazing. But nobody knows it.
Yeah. It's amazing what you can put in them, though. Like I chuck all sorts in mine, like celery and beetroot and greens and sprouts and all sorts of random things in there. Like, and it just looks disgusting, but it tastes amazing.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I would drink also green juices every day, but whatever's in the fridge goes in.
Yeah.
And I mean, when it is beetroot, people do give you funny looks because it looks like. I mean, it looks pretty gross.
Yeah, but beetroot is a powerful tool as well for really good for the blood and all that, isn't it? It's great.
Oh, it's absolutely raw beetroot is really good for you.
Yeah, it really is. Well, there's so much great stuff we could talk about, but it's getting late, isn't it? It is getting late tonight. So, speaking of,
really nice talking to you. Really good.
Yeah, it's been great. Speaking of recovery, we both have to get off to our beds soon, so I'm going to have to don my blue light blocking glasses and start winding down. I'm going to sit down actually tonight and read the last chapter of your book actually and get through that. So
great, and I'll let you know when the new one is released. Should be in probably in the next 6 or 7 weeks. Should be out.
All right, brilliant. And where can all the listeners get hold of you then? So you're on Instagram, aren't you?
Yes, Instagram or Instagram is JC Plant-Based Runner, or my webpage is JC Runs.
JC Runs. Okay.
Yeah. Right. So either of those, you'll get me. I'm on Facebook as well. But if you're looking for the books, just look it up on Amazon, and in running section, you'll see them there.
Yeah, awesome. And the online course, that's on your website, I guess.
Yes, that's on the website. Yeah. That's if you're looking to do your first 100 miles.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually not finished. There's over 70 videos going into that. So that'll be out in the next probably 2 or 3 weeks.
Right, brilliant. Okay, and we'll try and put most of this information in the show notes for the listeners, anybody who's interested in reaching out to you and getting in touch about these courses and any questions about your books. So it's been great. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for your time, Jonathan. It's been a great chat. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, me too. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks now.
Okay.